There we go. Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it a few seconds while everyone comes in. Numbers are slowly going up. How are you, Lori? Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lauren. I'm doing great. It's a very rainy, cold day, but I'm doing great. So hopefully we'll have no technology issues because it is pouring. Like I always tell my cats, it's raining kitty and doggies.
Well, it's funny. Our weather finally matches. It's not raining that hard, but it's definitely some wet, cool weather here.
Well, I'll let you get started because as I was saying, we have quite a packed show today. It's going to be pretty exciting to those joining us.
All right, then let's
Oh,
do
and I
it.
gotta say, we got Emma back. I haven't seen Emma in a while. So we got Emma back. I just gotta say, hello, Emma. So go ahead, Lauren, take it away.
Thank you. And Emma mentioned, hey, Emma, she mentioned the chat being disabled, so I just enabled it. And I see it's working because she said hello. So here we go. Give me a few seconds. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we are. This window
You're
is
good.
so small.
Yeah, you're small, but you're good.
Okay. Can you see my slides okay?
Yeah, I can. Now you're good.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Now, our services are at no cost to you because, well, your tax dollars have already taken care of our fees. For the Los Angeles network, you can see our physical center locations on the map in front of you. Please note that currently we are meeting via Zoom, but go ahead and take a look at those locations. We service the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And again, the centers are in front of you. You see that we are in Camarillo, Santa Clarita, all the way over to Pasadena, down into Laverne, throughout Los Angeles, the South Bay, as well as Long Beach. All right, so here is the good part. Here's what we offer. So we offer no cost business advising. And so you're able to meet one-on-one with one of our business experts in various fields. I'm talking from taxes to finance. If you're looking to create a business plan or a marketing strategy, if you're a handyman and you're looking to go into construction, so please be sure to get in contact with us. You might even have a chance to sit with our very own Miss Lori Williams, who is the guru of all numbers. Who wouldn't want to sit with a guru, right? And then we also offer virtual trainings, much like the comprehensive workshop you've joined today. Please, I cannot stress enough, go ahead and get in contact with us today. We'd love to get started with you and help you along your entrepreneurial journey. You can reach us by phone, 866-588-7232. You can also go online, smallbizla.org/new client. Now, if you've reached us outside of LA, please go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. Lori, I'm going to stop my screen share. Quick housekeeping. Please be sure to keep all questions related to the topic at hand, please. And then let's be sure we're putting those into the Q&A. The chat's going to be reserved for useful tips and information that Lori would like to share with you. With that, Lori, I'm going to hand it over to you. Good morning again.
Awesome. Good morning. So all of this that I have here, Lauren is going to be putting into the chat as I go through it. I have included from last week, once again, the business deduction of home office, as well as business use of car for those people who are currently getting their taxes ready. Please go to these links, and I stress, and I can't stress enough, I'm going to add to the stress on this. When you're looking for information, go to what I call straight to the horse's mouth. Go to the government pages. Don't get your information off a blog or from somebody writing about it. I hear so many people believe certain deductions exist that don't. So these links are straight to the IRS where you can read up more on these topics. Now, this is also going into the chat. I know you're not there yet, but I know this is going to be a question soon. So I'm starting now. If you're getting a refund, you want to know, when am I going to get a refund? Here is the tool that you can use. It's on the IRS website. You can check back tax refunds as well as this current, and you have to put in your social security number, et cetera. All the information is going to be in the chat. So when you get to a point of filing and you want to check your refund, there's the place to go to find out. Now, here is my upcoming classes. I've got my financial literacy series, session 2 and session 3. Session 1 already took place. I'll be repeating it. Session 2 and section 3 work really well together, although you can take any at any point. And then I have my what is the best legal structure for your company? What are the tax advantages? Important webinar for anybody, even if you're already incorporated, because there's so much confusion about a sole prop and an LLC. I started getting people say, well, I formed an LLC for the tax benefit. And I'm like, there is none between a sole prop. They're the same. And so a lot of information not understood properly. So join me for that webinar for some clarity on those topics. Now, coming up on the show next week is going to be Jeff Cunningham. He is one of the partners at Medical Asset Management. And then Rod Dorff is the past owner of PureFit. Now, I say past owner, and I'll use that as a way to describe what the focus of the following 2 weeks. These are individuals who have owned companies for some time. In Rob's case, he took it all the way through growth to selling it. Jeff's been around for eons. He's changed partners. He's done a whole lot of different things within the company. So these next 2 weeks are getting into more established companies and kind of following the cycle of progression. So you have an idea of what to expect, what mistakes to avoid, etc. So that's what's coming up next on the show. Now, with that, I have a couple announcements that I want to make before we get started today. And one of them I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to say, here's going to be my line, and I'll bring this back in a second. So here's my line, guys. It's time to take back control. Okay, what's Lori talking about? Time to take back control. Well, what I always do is I make my announcements based on what I'm experiencing in my one-on-ones, in my discussions. And what I've been experiencing for way over a couple months now, and I want to talk about, is this situation that I have a belief that some in the audience may find themselves in. And that is, over the last several years with the pandemic, et cetera, things changed within the companies. Many of the companies added debt, especially with the idle loan. Some people lost customers, and those customers have not yet fully returned. Some people increased their sales, but they did not do it at an acceptable profit margin. And some are behind on rent or having to pay a rent increase to make up for that missed rent. All of this is leading to challenges in cash flow. Now, what I've been experiencing as I'm speaking to people is it's also led to personal stress. And I've had many conversations with people who are having health issues because of the stress coming from all of these situations that occurred. So what I'm wanting to say, this is a heartfelt reach out to people, is to anyone who's experiencing any of these issues, I want to say it's time to take back control. And what I mean is control of your business, your finances, and your life. And the way to do that is to delve into the numbers, understand and accept the situation, and begin to consider options. Avoiding, putting off, or not wanting to look at it is only making it worse. Once you have the facts and the data, you can begin to work through a solution. Now, my career had extensive years in doing turnaround work, so every single situation was a crisis situation. I recall one time being in a board meeting where a husband and wife argued and cried for 20 minutes. And when they got done, I said, the good news is we now have the facts and we can plan a solution. So this is a reach out to you. If this resonates with you, it's time to take back control, time to get into the numbers. If you need help, Lauren's email is in the chat. Reach out to her. She can get in touch with me. We can get in touch with somebody that can sit down with you, but it's time. So that's what I wanted to bring up as a, hey, it's not worth health problems. That's what I keep telling people. It's not worth health problems. When you know what's going on, you have choices. And that's what we want to achieve, is choices. Now, speaking of choices, today is a really interesting show that I've been wanting to do for a long time. We're going to talk about QuickBooks. We're going to talk about QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. So first, about a little history, which I got from Wikipedia on QuickBooks. So QuickBooks, as anybody knows, it's an accounting software package that's developed and marketed by Intuit. Now, Intuit was founded in 1983 after the success of the Quicken product, which some people may be familiar with, which was individual financial management. Okay. So they initially released QuickBooks based on Quicken's code base. But professional accountants, they were not happy with this early version. They didn't like that there was poor security. There was no audit trail. Accountants like audit trails, able to look at the transactions. And also it had non-conformity with traditional accounting standards, right? Anybody involved in accounting wants accounting standards. So Intuit sought to bridge the gap with these accounting professionals, and eventually it provided full audit trail capabilities, double entry accounting functions, and increased functions on standardization. So by 2000, Intuit had developed basic and pro versions of the software, which is known as QuickBooks Desktop. Okay. Then what happened next is Intuit created the cloud-based service called QuickBooks Online. Now, QuickBooks Online users pay a monthly subscription fee rather than an upfront fee and access the software exclusively through a secure login or a web browser. The cloud version is a distinct product from the desktop version. However, QuickBooks are bringing these more into alignment. Now, why I wanted to discuss these two versions is I want to discuss the difference between the versions, as well as some of the beliefs about how you can utilize QuickBooks, or what maybe you don't need to do when you're utilizing QuickBooks, which I'll get into in a second. So with that, that brings me to an introduction of today's guest. Clarissa Wilson is the owner of Nerdy Numbers Lovers LLC. Okay, gotta love that. Nerdy Number Lovers. I think that's a fun name just to begin with. So Nerdy Number Lovers is an accounting firm that works with small online businesses to make the accounting and bookkeeping as easy as possible. Now, when I first met Clarissa, it was working with Holly, who's been on the show before. Clarissa does her QuickBooks. And I looked at the reports and I said, wow, these are correct. They look good. They look, compared to what I like to see as a CFO. And so I started asking Clarissa about it, and we'll talk about what she told me. And so I finally came back around and said, Clarissa, I would love to have you on the show. I understand QuickBooks Desktop. I don't work within QuickBooks Online, but what I'm seeing when I look at clients' financial statements in the SBDC is 99% of them are wrong. Let's talk about what's going on, what you see. Let's bring this information to the audience so they can make good decisions in how they handle their accounting. So that's the goal. Clarissa, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And it is not raining here. It's bright and sunny.
There you go. Yeah, we're in all different states today with the power of Zoom. We're together. Clarissa, I'm so excited to have you here that I just wanted to jump into everything. But let's back up a little bit. So tell us, have you always been in accounting?
I have actually. I have 3 college degrees in accounting, a bachelor's, 2 masters. Both masters are forensic accounting, so fraud. I was a government tax auditor for 6 years and then went full-time doing my own thing now.
Oh, I love the name. So tell me about the inspiration when you started the company. What were you wanting to focus on to achieve? Tell us a little bit about your goals.
So when I first started, it was actually 2014, and I just used my name. It wasn't until I was about to go full-time in 2020 where the name Nerdy Number Lovers just came to me, because I love numbers. And someone actually asked me, they're like, so do you mean that people that come to you love numbers? I'm like, no, by the time they're working with me and they understand things, they love their numbers then. They don't love them when they come to me, but they do end up loving them because, like you said, the numbers actually help you grow your business. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
I love that. And I'm such a big advocate of it. I really believe knowledge is power. And what I always tell people is, they think that I am similar to you. I've always been in accounting, and I was not. I never considered myself good in math. I actually got into accounting, I would say later. My first company was a marketing company, right? I was the warm fuzzy person. And at least I don't make up marketing like I make up numbers, or that would lead to fraud and you'd be auditing me, right? But what I always try to tell people is that I love numbers as well, but I didn't start out that way. I love them because they tell a story. And when you understand a story, is it a good story? Is it a bad story? How do I change the story? And it gives you choice. So let's talk about, just give me an idea of your typical client. What situation are they in? Why do they come to you? That kind of background to get our feet into this.
Okay, so I actually have two typical clients. The one is what you're explaining. They come to me, their books are a complete mess. I look at their reports and I'm like, why do you have all these negative numbers? They can't explain it because they don't know. Either they tried to do it themselves or they hired someone in another country for like $5 an hour. This one really bugs me, but that's what they try to do that because you can find people that are charging that and you think that they know what they're doing, but they really don't know what they're doing because they will just accept whatever QuickBooks says the account should be. And half of them are uncategorized expense, uncategorized revenue, or ask my accountant. And you should never have anything in those accounts.
Oh my God, you just said so much that I just want to I've got to peel back the onion. I'm all excited because I want to peel back the onion on all of this. So we're going to start little by little. Everything you just said, we're going to go through and everybody's going to get an understanding. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to start. And this is where I'm going to start. I'm going to say things, Clarissa, like I said, and it's just my perception. And in many ways, the conversation we're having in public, I would want to have off stage with you as well. And I've been wanting to, because this is what I'm seeing and I think, and I want to see, what are you seeing and what do you think? So this is as much of me being in the audience and learning as much as I'm speaking. So this is where I'm going to start. Clarissa, it seems to me that today, when you go to bookkeepers, you have people who maybe have a bookkeeping background, but then you have what I call people that just are technology people that learned some software. And that's all they are, is a technology person positioning themselves as an accounting person. And then the clients rely on them thinking they're an accounting person when all they are is somebody that just learned how to push some technology buttons, not knowing if it's correct or not. Your thoughts?
And I would actually go even further on that part there and say they've seen Facebook ads where bookkeeping is the perfect remote job. So you can take this course that costs $2,000 and you can learn and you can get your own clients and do it. And you still don't know what you're doing because you don't have that accounting background to know that you're doing the bookkeeping correctly.
That is such a good point. You're right. I never thought about it, that people are getting into the position. I even had a client that was using what would be considered a large company. And I was looking at what they were doing, and they were doing everything computer automated. Nothing was being checked by a human being. So that's another area we can go. Maybe it'll come to this someday, Clarissa, but from where I'm sitting right now, accounting is mostly checked by humans and very little automation. It's not just plug and play and run with it. What's your thoughts?
Correct. So QuickBooks has that feature where you can auto add all of your transactions. That is the thing that I will go in and turn off. Most clients will turn those on because they think it's easy. It doesn't make your bookkeeping easy because QuickBooks half the time is reading your transactions wrong. I have an example. So I have one client who makes money on Amazon. Every time this money comes in from Amazon and it's coming into the bank, QuickBooks reads this as an expense and it's revenue. It's not an expense. And they have a rule on that, but I turned the rules off to auto add. So it still shows that it's coming in as an expense. But I have to change that because, like you said, the human has to review it. And you can't do that auto add because QuickBooks is reading things wrong. I have another client who has a Dashify card and they spend everything on Dashify. Everything comes into QuickBooks, Dashify, and then the name of the vendor they bought. So you can have Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all those different things. QuickBooks is reading that as Dashify and putting them all as Google advertising.
Yeah, and
So,
on that, I had a client that put money into the bank because they couldn't cover the bills, and QuickBooks picked that up as a customer paying. And so they did not catch this before filing taxes, and they paid taxes on their own money putting in because they didn't make money. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. So
yes.
everybody in the audience, what we're saying is syncing your data with your bank account and your checkbooks, can I just say blindly without checking each and every transaction, and I'll let you fill in the blanks on the specifics there, is very, very dangerous. At the least, you're going to have incorrect categorization, and then that is being reported to the IRS. The other thing Clarissa said, I'm going to add to this before I throw it to you. I keep emphasizing to people, you have to realize that the data going into QuickBooks is going into your taxes, which is reporting to the IRS. And as an enrolled agent, I remember on the test, if you are using software, you are responsible for the numbers. Just a technology is not an excuse. So if you report it to IRS incorrectly, you get audited, you're responsible. You can't answer what the data is. It's a very scary thing. So let's go deeper so our audience understands when we're talking about this turning it off from auto and checking it. We're talking about the syncing process. So Clarissa, I'm going to add one more part, and then you're going to run with this client, say, well, I don't want to retype all this. I don't have the time to type all this. So what is some solutions they can do? What can they be doing to make sure things are accurate and efficient?
Okay, so where they don't want to type it, you don't have to actually type it. You can have your bank feed automatically sync into the software. And then you have to go to that bank feed, and that is where you are putting it in specific categories so that it shows correctly. So if you have Google advertising, you don't want that to show in your software account.
Right.
So that you're only typing to change the category that these things are going into. And when you do this auto ad, your stuff's going all over the place. You might have Google advertising in your Google advertising account, in your software account, even in your payroll account, because you're letting this auto ad happen and you're not catching where these things should be.
And speaking of payroll, because today's really sharing kind of a little bit of horror stories too, because if at the end of this, I get people a little afraid and they'll have them wake up, I'm kind of okay with that. I'm not about making people afraid, but I'm kind of into having accurate numbers. So in awareness, but I've had a client came to me afterwards, but they were using QuickBooks and they were also using Intuit for their payroll, which to me is not like an ADP or Paychecks. I don't trust it, right? Well, I don't know whether they made the mistake or the software. I wasn't involved in it. But what happened is they had like 10 employees. And so the payroll taxes were being deducted from the 10 employees, but only put into the bank for 8. That small amount they never checked. It went on for 5 years. That's fraud, as you know, even if it's a mistake. IRS caught them for fraud, put a lien on. And one of the other things is everybody, which because you know the IRS and fraud, everybody who touches that from licking the stamp and the envelope and is brought into that court case, right? So these are scary things that you just can't run a business without looking at. The software is not doing it for you. So I even see payroll being a concern. The thoughts or add-ons to that?
I always say to stay away from QuickBooks payroll. If you want to do payroll through a company, use something like ADP, Paychecks, Gusto, something like that, where they are an actual payroll company. Because I have a client who used QuickBooks payroll. We have a horror story there. Like, he shut it off. He stopped using QuickBooks payroll, switched to another thing. QuickBooks kept pulling the taxes from his bank account. They weren't even running the payroll, but they're continuing to pull the taxes from his account. We had to block block QuickBooks on the bank side so that they couldn't continue to take the money, because these taxes are paid a different way now because we're using a different payroll company. And QuickBooks then sends us to collections because we're not paying our taxes that are not done through them anymore. And then I get the collection calls because I'm the accountant on the account, and I wasn't even doing payroll for him. And then he gets the collection calls and he contacts me. He's like, don't talk to them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I
Like,
also had a client that tried to, she contacted me thinking I could help her. And she had been using QuickBooks Desktop the last time I spoke. And I looked at, and I'm like, wait a minute, what is, because I looked at her screen. I'm like, this isn't the same file. What's going on? And she said, well, I signed up with this and I signed up and they're doing my QuickBooks and they're syncing the payroll and the credit card and all this. And I go, what's all this stuff in the window? They go, oh, that's ones that I just let come in. 1,000 transactions a month she just lets come in, and she tried to call QuickBooks and couldn't get an answer on the payroll. So I'm not really trying to say yes or no on any software. It's a choice, but what I am saying is you really got to have a high level of respect. This isn't an Instagram putting a picture on, when you're talking about payroll, accounting, and all this stuff, it's so important, which leads me to another thing that drives me up a wall. People want to use these software programs that are free, or they're just really invoicing and credit card software programs that act like accounting programs. Any comments or thoughts on that?
not exactly, because I haven't run into any clients that try to do that, or if they
Okay.
have tried to do that, I push them to using a software like QuickBooks, so that their bookkeeping is done correctly. Because you're trying to cut the corners and cut costs. I understand that, but it's not a full-blown system. So if you're trying to use the Stripe bookkeeping, which I've heard of it, I've never even looked into it, I've just heard of it, where they can help you with your bookkeeping. Not all of your stuff is going through Stripe. Only your sales are going through Stripe, and then the fees that you're paying to Stripe. So you would have to do even more work to get all of your expenses into Stripe. FreshBooks actually used to be this way, where they would only count your income if you invoice it through FreshBooks. So I don't know if that has changed or not. I've only used FreshBooks like 4 years ago. I haven't used it since, but they used to be that way, where they would only count your income if you invoice it through FreshBooks. If you made income another way, it didn't count as income in your bookkeeping in FreshBooks.
Well, and that brings up, and I looked at FreshBooks with a client, it's probably about 3-4 years ago. And what I saw with this, and this is where I tell people to look into what the software program's main capabilities are. What is it created for? And the FreshBooks seemed to do really well with timekeeping and being able to monitor your time and input it. And it did good with creating an invoice and having somebody pay it. But that was it. And I can do timekeeping with an Excel document, and I could create an invoice with a PDF because it didn't have balance sheets or anything like that. So what you really have to do, I always say, is advice, and I'll ask you to speak advice because you'll speak it in a different way, is that you have to look at the history. You have to look at what reports it can run. You have to look at what its prime purpose is. Like a lot of times people are talking about Wave. I don't know a whole lot about Wave, but I'm not comfortable with it yet. And I'm not comfortable with the free version of Wave. I'm never comfortable with free, okay? And people go, I know it's not secure. I go, it's not about security. It's about data. I need that data for 3 to 4 years for the IRS, and I can't get access to the data. So I always tell people that they need to really delve into the software they're considering and figure out what it does, what it's good at, what reports it can run, because you may find yourself at one point going to a bank for a bank loan, and if you can't run certain reports, you're going to have to create those. So I tell them to audit the software to find out its main purpose. Any thoughts on that, Clarissa?
Yes, I'm on the same wavelength as you. Like you said, FreshBooks, they're more for timekeeping and invoicing. It's not for doing your whole bookkeeping, but they tried to basically like sweep that in there and say we can do this. but they really can't if you don't do all of your invoicing through there. It'll pull your expenses in, but if it won't pull all of your sales in. And Wave, stay away from free. Like I'm the same, stay away from free. But my reasoning for staying away from the free is because you're syncing your bank data in there and it's free. So it's not as secure as QuickBooks would be because it's free.
Yeah,
Because they don't have the funds to pay for all of that extra software to keep it secure.
Yeah, and I'm not always happy, or I say I'm not happy a lot of times with how much QuickBooks markets itself to small businesses, saying that you can just plug and play and it's so simple and you can do it on your phone. That drives me up a wall. But with that said, Clarissa, I still, in my opinion, unfortunately, fortunately, whatever, I think QuickBooks is still the best bet if you've got a serious company and you're going to go for banks, because at least the banks and the documents, and it's got an accounting background. So I feel like it's really cool to try the brand new technology on some things, but accounting is not one of them. So until somebody comes up with some history and banks are accepting and it's been around for some time and I know the name and I check the accounting standards within it, I'm going to stay with QuickBooks. I've always wished something else would come up. Now, when you get into bigger companies, obviously we got Sage and we've got a lot of the bigger company software, but those are expensive. I'm talking about in the small business world.
Yep.
And it just seems to me, whether you go QuickBooks Online or desktop, QuickBooks is still the safest bet, if I can just say it that way, in my opinion. I'm not working for QuickBooks. They piss me off all the time with their advertisements, to be honest with you. But I still think I want to stay with that foundation before I go into some of these companies coming up along the line. But that could be me because I'm more conservative, right? What's your thoughts?
I actually agree with that, but you also need to have an accounting professional work with you, because QuickBooks was created for accountants, for small business. It was not created for the small business owner who doesn't understand accounting.
And with that, I was going to actually circle back. What can we tell the audience as far as, I'm going to call it interview questions? So what I always try to express to somebody is, when you're getting ready to hire a bookkeeper, start looking into what is it that bookkeeper is doing. What are their process? Are they using QuickBooks Online? Are they checking every transaction? I try to give words like that I know, but you may be able to add additional advice on how they can interview to make sure they don't just have a technology person. They have somebody that actually knows accounting. Any words of advice you can give on somebody interviewing a bookkeeping service?
So one of the first questions that I prefer clients to ask, they don't normally ask this, but I understand their business. You need to find someone who understands your business. So there are tons of different kinds of businesses. There are bookkeepers and accountants who specialize in online-based business, in e-commerce business, in the SaaS businesses. You need to find someone who actually understands your business, not someone who's just like, yeah, I take everyone. Because there's different accounting types for these. So with an e-commerce business, like we've mentioned, Holly, she sells physical products. So not everyone understands tracking inventory and how to account for cost of goods sold. When you have a business that doesn't have physical products, you don't have to worry about that. But when you have those physical products, you do, and you need a bookkeeper or an accountant who fully understands how to account for the inventory cost of goods sold and figuring that out into your profit and loss statements. Because I have a client who has physical products. He actually messaged me last week and he's like, I don't see cost of goods sold here. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't give me your inventory numbers for what you sold. So I can't calculate the cost of goods sold on here. And we'd had this conversation several times over the past couple months after we finished 2022. So I have a way for him to give me those numbers. He just hasn't given them to me yet for January and February. So his balance or his profit and loss statement is off by however much inventory they sold.
Which comes to another good part that you mentioned, and this is something I like clients to be aware of, or companies. They have to also have buy-in. they have to participate in providing the information to you. They have to participate in answering the questions. A lot of times they think they can just turn over their passcode to the bank statements and the credit cards and you take it from there. But they have to realize that they have to be proactive and should also look at the reports they're receiving. And that ties me in. I'm going to tie all this together. The importance of the client's participation. And something you said earlier that I say a lot is that when I look at the balance sheet, I see and understand that things are wrong. And it's because of the negative numbers on certain accounts like cash. So let's take the client's responsibility, the need for the clients to look at their own reports, and some of the things they can look for that you don't even have to have an accounting background, but you can look at immediately and go, whoa, something's wrong. So take anywhere you want to go with that, Clarissa.
So when you were looking at your profit and loss or your balance sheet, 99% of those numbers should all be positive. If you see a negative number, you know something is wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to question it. Now, not all the time those negative numbers are going to be wrong. That's why I said 99%. So say you're looking at your reports on a monthly basis and you bought, let's go with $500 worth of software last month, but you decided that in the first 3 days that software is not going to work for you. So you got a refund, but that refund comes in the next month. So that would show a negative number on the next month. But like I said, 99% of the time you see a negative number on your balance sheet or your profit and loss, that is your first clue that something is most likely wrong.
Perfect. I know I teach a class on that and I tell them, when you look at your cash and you see negative numbers, the bank doesn't allow you to have a negative number. That tells me immediately there's an issue. And where else I see a lot of problems now, a lot of people don't have accounts receivable. That's when clients owe you money, guys, because some of them are collecting it immediately. But if you see a negative accounts receivable, that means somebody's overpaid you. More than likely, that means an accounting mistake. And if you see a negative accounts payable, that means you overpaid, which you could have, but more than likely an accounting mistake. So I always say, yeah, I love what you say, the 99%, that's so true. But I always say focus especially on the cash, the bank accounts, the accounts payable, the accounts receivable. That's where I see a lot of the mistakes happening and I always tell people, Clarissa, I can't tell them if it's right or wrong, but I can tell them if I suspect there are issues.
Yes.
Which brings us to you're going to understand why I'm saying this. This is a slappy question. You're going to get why I say this in a minute. The question or the necessity to clean up bad reports and accounts. So I've had people come to me. I've worked with QuickBooks Desktop to try to do adjusting journal entries, try to clean up these reports. And I'll give you just a couple sentences on what I have to do, which you're far more expert because you're dealing with this on a daily basis. But I always say we got to go back to the original data. We got to pull up and say, what is the balance in the credit card today? What is the balance in the bank statement? And then I have to look at the tax returns to see, well, what is the shareholders' equity? What is the net profit? What has been reported as retained earnings in the past years? So what I was just trying to explain in my very little, which probably went over a lot of people, I get it, is that you just don't put a couple numbers in. People think, well, you just delete the number like an Excel document and type in the new number. So run with, Clarissa, the subject of getting QuickBooks or any accounting to be correct once it's incorrect. How challenging that is.
It depends on how incorrect it is. So I'll give you two different examples. So I had one client who they had literally just started their business, but they had 3 months of bookkeeping that was already done. And so much of it was wrong, like in the wrong category, in the wrong accounts. I just deleted all of it and started from the beginning. But like I said, they only had 3 months worth done. Yes, they had 500 plus transactions because they grew fast, but I just deleted it all and started over. But when you have 3 years worth of bookkeeping, I will go through account by account. And yes, it takes a little while, and I will recategorize the way that it has to. If you add someone, an accountant, to your QuickBooks Online account as an accountant, we have a special tool where we can move multiple transactions at once instead of having to do it one at a time.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes, I didn't know it at first either. I had a client who I was doing a cleanup job for, and I spent 40 hours a week for 3 months cleaning them up. And at the end of that, I was told about that tool. So
Wow,
I know
yes,
about that tool now.
yeah, because QuickBooks Desktop has that, and I've used it before. And you're absolutely correct. Like, I've looked at some people who's had numbers for 3 years, and what I've had to do is they were transferring from maybe QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop, which means starting over. You cannot export the data. So I would say, let's pick a time, whether it's the end of the year because we're close, or it's a quarter, where we then run dual systems. And then I have to just kind of start and say, all your data from this point's here, and then the data from this point is here, and there's no other way to go about it because there was no way to, kind of make all of this be cleaned up. The best thing was going back to the original data. So while we're talking about data, so I don't forget to mention this, I would like our audience, and once again, these are just bits of information to understand choices. I want them to understand the two models between the desktop, which they call subscription. A lot of people will say it's a subscription, and then they'll say online it's a subscription, and they're using those two words like they're identical, and they're not. The way that it's paid for desktop and the data is different than online. So I'll let you walk people through that. Once again, all I'm trying to do is give them the knowledge as a choice, because some people don't realize this.
Well, I will also add that recently QuickBooks has changed the desktop to a subscription where you now have to pay every year.
Yes, they have. But
No.
what I always do is I explain, you're totally correct, Clarissa, and I didn't lead it up enough to help understand. I always explain that, and I'll let you take it from there, that the online, and it's a terrible analogy, but it's the best I come up with so far. The online is more like a Facebook account, the fact that it's in the cloud, and when you don't have an account anymore, versus the desktop is more like a Microsoft 365. That's kind of how I explain it. And what I am always trying to tell people is that the QuickBooks Desktop, as it being a Microsoft 365, if I quit paying Microsoft, I still have the Word doc on my computer, and I could give it to you and you could open, or I could pay Microsoft 365. But the QuickBooks Online is different. When you quit paying, it kind of goes away. So that's where I was going with it.
Yes. So if you have the QuickBooks Desktop, yes, you can still open it and get your reports if you stop paying. Whereas if you have the online, you end your subscription, you have 45 days, I think it is, to download any reports that you need. And then otherwise you're done.
It's gone. And that's where me being the CFO EA, I have a problem with it, because I might have to go back 3 years, and I feel like I'm kind of stuck in that. But once again, it's a personal choice. So while we're on that topic, let's now, and there was a question in the audience about it a bit too. I don't know, or I don't believe QuickBooks successfully imports into QuickBooks Online to desktop, or QuickBooks to another software, or like a Wave, which their person's asking this Wave importing into QuickBooks. I don't see these imports and exports being very good, if at all possible. Give me your, and I'm not an expert on it, but give me your impression on the ability to go from one software to program. I think you got to stop, start, know the reports are there, and then go from here. What's your opinion?
I completely agree with that. It is not easy to switch from QuickBooks to anywhere else. So the easy way is to reconnect your bank account and download everything from your bank account. Yes, you're going to have to resort it. I have tools to make it easier when I'm resorting through the bank information. I have a client who is switching from QuickBooks to Xero. They started their business in 2010. So they have 13 years of QuickBooks data. What I did for their QuickBooks data is I actually went through and I downloaded the reports in Excel format
Okay.
from QuickBooks so that we have all of them. And then in Zero, we're starting with January 1st of 2023. So yes, we won't have access to the QuickBooks information, but we have it all in Excel. So I did the balance sheet, income statement, and the general ledger, because the general ledger is obviously everything you can rebuild from the general ledger.
Yeah, and I always, when anybody says something's in Excel, I always have a comfort with it. I'm going to go back to Excel in a minute, but before I do so, I don't forget, I don't have any experience with Zero. What's your opinion of that software? I know nothing of it whatsoever, and people have asked me. So give me your 2 cents on what you see Zero as being.
Honestly, I like Zero unless you have a physical product. Zero does not work for keeping track of inventory and helping with that. QuickBooks does have modules to help with tracking your inventory. None of my clients use that module. We use spreadsheets. It's easier. You're not missing something when you're using a spreadsheet, whereas in a software, you're missing something. You have to literally go line through line to figure out what you're missing.
Yeah.
But if you're using a physical or you're selling a physical product, I'd say Zero, don't use it. Some people do, but I still recommend staying away from it. People switch to Zero because it costs a lot less compared to QuickBooks. But it is, for the most part, pretty well versed with QuickBooks. But it's, again, you need to know accounting to know how to use it, because it is a little bit tougher to use than QuickBooks is.
Gotcha. Okay, so I got like little fingers held because I'm trying to remember to ask all this stuff because so much came up. So this is where I'm going to go first. I'm going to go back to the Excel. So a couple things that I believe in, and I wanted to get your impression on this. So I always explain that QuickBooks and any software, any accounting software, that's doing the financial management, which is really the accounting process to fill out tax returns, do financial statements, etc. But there's this whole version that people don't understand called managerial accounting, which is something you do outside of these reports, where you want to understand how profitable I am if you have to switch it from being a cash basis. What is my inventory levels? So what I try to get people to realize, Clarissa, is that you're going to have many Excel documents, and if you don't, you're not following something, you're missing something. That even when I was the CFO for bigger companies that had extremely expensive software programs, I had even more Excel documents. That you cannot financially manage a company without Excel documents, that your software is just your depository of data. You got to extract it to analyze, because people think, oh, I got my QuickBooks software, I got a bookkeeper, I'm done. And I'm like, no, that is not done. That's not even begun. Your thoughts?
Yep, exactly. Like, even like the bare minimum that you can do with looking at your reports is literally reading your profit and loss and your balance sheet and making sure that you understand what they say. If you don't understand what they say and you contact your bookkeeper, your accountant, and they can't explain to you what's on there, find someone new.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's so true. It's so true. I would tell clients at the SBDC, call your bookkeeper and ask, what is this account? And they're like, well, we don't know. And I'm like, that's scary.
Yeah, they should be able to tell you what that account is. I have clients that will message me. I'm not even looking at their QuickBooks, and I can tell you what's in that account.
Yep.
Give me 2 minutes. And like, but I can tell you what it is for the most part. I just have that really good memory that I know what it is. Sometimes, yes, I will have to go look it up, but I can still tell you what it is. If they can't answer that question, and when you ask what's in this account, you need to find someone new, basically.
I agree. So I got 2 more places that are real important that I want to go. So I do not believe, and as always, I'm going to say my thoughts and then you tell me, I do not believe it's a good idea to have any proprietary software connected to QuickBooks. Now, I'm not talking about the bank account and everything like we're talking about, but I have so many clients go, well, this connects to this and this tracks this and this tracks that. And I'm like, no, I believe, and this is my opinion, my personal opinion, to me, your accounting, your financial data has to have a firewall around it. It has to be secured, because if something gets plugged in and messes it up, once again, that's your numbers, that's your IRS reporting, that's your bank if you get a loan. So I am not into cooking all this stuff up, and everybody wants to hook all this new technology up to their accounting, and I want to scream. I'm scared. What do you think, Clarissa? Am I over conservative?
Completely agree with you, because when you're hooking up this third-party stuff and you have your bank connected, you're double reporting. So whether you're double reporting your sales, you're double reporting your expenses, because 99% of the people that do this, because I've done cleanup jobs with this, they're not matching the payment that comes through the bank, whether it's money coming in or money going out. They're not matching it to the invoice, or the invoice, whether it's going in or out, when it comes to the bank. So now you have this invoice done twice. So you received the income twice. You paid a bill twice. So you're double reporting, which if you double report your income, now you're paying double the taxes. If you double report your expenses, then you have too much net loss.
Yep, you're underdoing. See, and I don't, because I'm not doing the accounting, I don't have the physical experience, but I have the seeing people's reports, and then they say, well, I hooked this up and everything's wrong, and I'm looking at the financial statement. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because I'm seeing the end results of this. Now, here's another interesting thing that I often do, Clarissa. So keep in mind, I want you to think really, really small business with very few transactions. They're just getting started, and they're wanting to, they're dealing with, okay, I got to get QuickBooks. Maybe I should get the QuickBooks Small Business. Oh, should I learn it? I don't really have money to hire a bookkeeper, etc. You know what I do, Clarissa? I know this is like out of the box thinking, but this is what I do, and it's worked. I help them to customize an Excel document. I make little tabs for sales, for cost of goods, and for overhead. I do drop down boxes with the chart of accounts, right? I have them enter it, and then I have them make a copy and sort and group and total at the end of the year. And I tell them there's no added expense. The data is flat. And what I mean by it, where they put things into QuickBooks, but they can't read a balance sheet, they can see it. It's right there. They don't have to worry about making mistakes. They own it. They don't have to worry about hiring somebody. And what I find is it creates a relationship with the numbers, where they know their company numbers at the beginning. And even if they have a POS with a lot of transactions, I'm having them enter the data historically from a bank statement. So I'll just put in maybe January deposits and have them go on the statement and just check off each one of them to make a deposit. It's not totally archaic, because it's using Excel and everything, but you know what, Clarissa? It works. And if they want to go to an accounting software when they grow, they got the Excel as the beginning years. It's not going away, and you can make a balance sheet if you need to. So in many ways, I think that too many people think, oh, I got an idea, I'm going to get an LLC. That's a whole nother story. But then they're like, I just started with a few transactions, I'm going to get QuickBooks, and then their data's messed up from day one. Thoughts on that?
So that spreadsheet, I've actually created one, and I know there's questions about my bookkeeping toolkit, and someone has already bought it. That is what is in my bookkeeping toolkit. I do not really talk about software in my toolkit. I created my own spreadsheet in that toolkit, which is exactly like what she says. It will show you your profit and loss statement. You have the drop down. That's exactly what it is. And yes, I do say to, if you're smaller business, go with that spreadsheet. But again, make sure it's a spreadsheet that is created by an accounting professional, because I have seen those spreadsheets out there where they're missing key information, because when these spreadsheets are created by an accountant, you can actually take that spreadsheet and file your taxes from it. The ones that I've seen that are missing key information, there's stuff that's missing where you can't file your tax returns.
Absolutely. And that's where, you know, I have like a page where I, excuse me, a tab that I have the assets and everything like that. So when I do it, they can take that spreadsheet and go right to the accountant on that. Absolutely. So here's one last heavy topic. Sales tax, Clarissa. I'm seeing so many problems with sales tax, especially since you're going to know what I'm talking about, South Dakota versus Wayfair, right? With having to charge sales tax. I teach a class on that law, right? But I see so much confusion with the sales tax, and people think Shopify is remitting it, and they're not. They're just collecting it. Then some people use TaxJar and Avalar. I think I'm getting the name right. Give us a rundown on sales tax. I know the law and I know the rules, but from an accounting nightmare, it seems to have a lot of problems. What's your experience with that?
It does have a lot of problems. And I will add, when I was a government tax auditor, sales tax was my specialty for 4 of the 6 years.
Oh, you asked the right question to the right person. Talk away on it.
Yeah, so 4 of my 6 years as an auditor, sales tax was my specialty. Sales tax is, and I have started creating a course called, and I just named it Sales Tax Crash Course. It is not available to buy at the moment because I didn't finish creating it. But there are, in that course, there are 33 states where if you are selling something digital, not a service, a digital product, 33 states say you have to charge sales tax.
Yep.
The biggest problem with sales tax that most people miss, the state that you live in, you are 100% responsible for collecting sales tax, no matter what thresholds you meet. So let's go with California. You live in California and you sell products in the state of California, but you also sell them in other states. Anything you sell in California that is taxable for sales tax, you have to collect and report the sales tax for that state of California. The stuff that you sell in another state, you have to cross the thresholds. So most thresholds, not all of them, most are $100,000 and 200 transactions in a year. So you live in California, you sell to the state of Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania is actually different. Pennsylvania's $10,000 threshold. So you sell into the state of Pennsylvania and you cross that $10,000 threshold, you now have to collect and pay sales tax to anyone who you deliver in California and Pennsylvania.
Yep. And that means getting a selling permit in that state as well.
Okay.
So a lot of people are still in the past where they believe if they sell outside the state they're in, they don't collect sales tax, and that is not true. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it is confusing because it's state by state, and so you have to make sure you record everything and you're on top of it. So I don't go into the accounting of it, but I do have a class that I probably need to offer again on sales tax because I see so many nightmares on that. So I like to bring that up as well. Quick, I've been looking at the different questions and we've been kind of touch base. A lot of times I feed them in. There was one person that asked, is there anything you know specific on accounting software that's good to track travel agency businesses, a cash base? I'm thinking that's just the same as a QuickBooks. There's nothing different to that. That's what I think.
QuickBooks or Xero. I recommend both. I don't make the client use one or the other. They get to choose on their end.
So I would say if we were to, here's my summary. First of all, I can't thank you enough for coming on, Clarissa, and I'm going to already tell you I'm going to be bothering you to come on again. So I'm already announcing that to you, okay? Because this has been fantastic. In my goals been achieved because as I told you when we were starting to go live, I really wanted everybody to have an awareness of their involvement that they must take within their own accounting and how they can't just take everybody who's offering offering services face value. They have to really interview, find out their processes, what they're doing, and accounting needs to be treated with more respect than it currently is, because people spend all this time on a Facebook ad or an Instagram perfect selfie and no time on accounting. Drives me up a wall, Clarissa. Accounting and numbers is the backbone of your company. And it is, people have been, like I said at the beginning, I've been having a lot of conversations that have been very hard. And I've had a lot of people crying on the phone, not about their marketing or their selfie not looking pretty, okay? It's about the cash flow. So that's why we want to take a more aggressive role on it. So I would like to pass this to you. Any last summary that you'd just like to tell the audience on things that they should be conscious of?
I actually completely agree with what you just said. Like, if you like, okay, yeah, I didn't take the perfect selfie. Well, I hate to break it to you, but that selfie doesn't affect your cash flow. If you don't know what's coming in and what's going out and what's due, because your bank account is not going to tell you what bills are coming due, you need to look at that accounting stuff. You need to hire an accountant or bookkeeper to help you with this stuff if you don't know how to do it.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Clarissa. We got a lot of questions about your toolkit and stuff. Lauren, can you put the information for getting in touch with Clarissa's website back in the chat for those who have joined us late, so they have all the information? There's also contact information for Clarissa on this. Lauren, was that not powerful with a lot of great information?
So I will tell you, I was a little scared as well, but yes, very much so. I think Emma and I both got the toolkit, so that's going to be great. And there's tons of people that are just like raving about all the information. Thank you so much, Clarissa, for being on. Really appreciate it.
We're going to get
love
back
having
on
these conversations.
You know, this is, like I said, it was something I've been wanting to do for so long, and I was trying to find the right person. And that's when I was like, I found the right person to have this conversation. So I want to thank everybody, our frequent flyers, Emma back in the audience, Randy, I saw a second there ago. Thank you for our frequent flyers. Those of you who joined us for the first time, welcome. I am so excited to always have great guests bringing wonderful information, because you know, in my heart and hearts, I want you to succeed in business, because the goal in life is to be at peace and happy, and you need money to do that. Unfortunately, it's a monopoly game, and we got to learn to play it right. And if we're going to be in business, we want it to be a blessing for us, not a curse. So I want to thank everybody. We're looking forward to seeing you next couple weeks. We got some great conversations. Thank you again, Clarissa, and thank you for tuning in to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. See everybody next week.
Bye, ladies. Thank you so much. All right, everyone, go ahead and check that chat. I've listed information for Clarissa. I've also listed my email address should you want to get in contact with Miss Lori Williams. So let me put it in there again. Should you need anything at all, we are here. We are so excited that you were able to join us today. We look forward to having you next week. Same time, same channel. You're going to click the exact same link. It's going to be next Wednesday at 10 a.m. For Small Biz Talk, solutions for your small business. Thank you so much. Take care.